Hello and welcome to Trada's webinar, How to Use Google Analytics for Good and Evil. I'm Anna Sawyer and I'm here with Neil Robertson, who is the CEO of Trada. Neil spends a great deal of time exploring Google Analytics and learning new ways to use it to optimize paid search campaigns. And he helps us to understand social media and track the success of our SEO and SEM. So today he'll focus on using Google Analytics, which is free and very powerful, to intelligently improve your paid search efforts, and some tricks about SEM and SEO and display ads. So a little about the webinar. We'll be happy to take your questions at the end, but feel free to type them into the question box while we're talking. In today's webinar, we'll go over several types of custom reports, and later today we'll send you a brief detailing how to put together a custom report. So now I will hand this over to Neil. Neil, welcome.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. You may be wondering why the CEO is doing a presentation about something that might seem as tactical as analytics. And the reason is that we're a very data-driven organization. Throughout our organization, we look at key metrics on a daily, sometimes hourly, definitely weekly basis. And Google Analytics is an unbelievable starting place for many of those analytics. So I'm wade in and out of Google Analytics all the time. It tells us what's going in our sales pipeline, our marketing pipeline, what's working with our SEO strategy, visits to the website, etc. It gives me a pretty good overview of what's going on in the business. I've come to appreciate that analytics is powerful but confusing. You have to spend quite a bit of time sort of poking around in it to find whatever you want. Part of why I want to go through sort of a somewhat scripted set of things today is I'm confident that I can always figure out what I need to do in analytics, but it always takes me a few experiments of coming at it from different angles just because of the way that Google Analytics is laid out. So I'm going to go through basically three things, moving from sort of simpler to more complex, hopefully more commonly known to you, to things that you've never thought about or realized you could get out of analytics, and hope you follow me along. I will go through the process in the beginning of building each piece of the puzzle, a custom report, segments, those kinds of things. And then as we go further on, I'll actually have those things pre-built so that you don't have to watch me somewhat laboriously pulling together the same kind of thing over and over again. Great. Let's jump on it. I'm going to flip my screen here over to Google Analytics. Great. So I'm actually logged in now to the Trada.com homepage, data for the Trada.com homepage. And I'm using some old data. I'm going to flip between different time frames of data. What I'm going to do is sort of use different time frames to sort of exploit the point that I'm trying to make a little bit. But for the most part, I'll just stick with a 1-month context here at the top right hand of the amount of time that I'm using. Where I wanted to start off is with the concept of landing pages. So we think about landing pages in our system that says 3 different types of landing pages in our system. One says the home page. One is the home page, where these are things that people sort of type in directly into the browser, and they come to your website, or maybe someone emails a link, that kind of thing. The second is, of course, something that you put on your site that someone else links to. So maybe you've got a blog on your website and they link to that. And the third is what's a more traditional thought of a landing page, which is the idea that you create a very specific destination for someone to jump into, and you tie it to a display ad or a paid search ad, those kinds of things. To give you some basic information about how to get landing pages and see how they sort of distribute, you go into into content here, and you show top landing pages. So the landing pages, as you can see when you scroll down, we have lots and lots of them on our website. So this is, of course, our home page. We have landing pages that we've designed for our Facebook programs. We have all of these blog landing pages, these sorts of things that you're seeing here, and then some more specific landing pages that I'll talk about in a second, called the Trada Dash landing pages that we custom built for our paid search campaigns. What I wanted to start off with is to show you a basic place to take a look at how well each of these landing pages works. And the best proxy for this is looking at what's called a bounce rate. So a bounce rate is essentially a measurement that says when people come and take a look at this page, do they go and look further in your website? Do they read other blog articles? Do they explore your website? Do they watch videos? Do they fill out lead forms? You get pretty vastly varying bounce rates as time goes by. So, for example, on the blog, it's not unusual to get a 100% bounce rate. Somebody clicked on a blog link, they came in, they read the blog entry, and they left. They weren't interested in the company necessarily. They weren't interested in reading more. They were just interested in reading that specific subject. So the bounce rate is 100%. That's not an uncommon thing to see. If you scroll down, you'll start to see some much better bounce rates. And these bounce rates should be related to your products or your lead generation forms. So for example, people that came in to the page about our investors were invested in by a venture firm called Foundry and a number of angels from the industry. Less than half of the people that landed on the page as a starting point actually bounced and didn't come back. They started to explore the website. So maybe they were reading one of our investors' blogs, and that blog linked to this page as a starting point on our page. This is kind of what got them interested to read more. This is very sort of basic information to start with, but it doesn't answer the more important question, which is which of your landing pages are the ones that turned your customers into customers or turned your visitors into customers. So let's say, for example, that you're either selling something online, whether it be Blackberries or satellite radio cards or anything like that, or you're actually getting people to fill out forms for leads, whether it's you're selling through a software or you have a service, like if you're a plumber, those kinds of things. How do you find out which of your pages that people start on are the ones that are most convincing to them to end up either buying something or signing up to learn more from you? Well, you can do that by actually building a relatively simple report. One of the things that's funny about Google Analytics is even to answer basic questions like that, you actually have to build something custom. It's sort of quite surprising. In Google Analytics, conversions are actually called goals. And we have on our website, and I'll just jump over to it here, we actually have two different types of goals on our website. A goal is for an advertiser to sign up for our business. We'll talk a little bit later about what we do as Trada. The basic idea is that we help people place ads on Google, Yahoo, and Bing. So an advertiser is our primary target, someone who wants to advertise on Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Or we actually are looking for paid search experts that want to come in and go through a certification process, and they want to join our marketplace to work on these campaigns. These are the two types of people that we're looking for. So in our Google Analytics, we actually have two different goals. One that tracks when an advertiser signed up, and one that tracks when a paid search expert signed up. And as I'm showing you the reports, you'll see these two different types of goals in many of the places. To set up a report to figure out how well your landing pages are working to generate different types of leads or sales, you go to Custom Reporting, and click on Manage Reports, and you go ahead and create a new report. As a side note, I'm using Google Analytics Live here because I sort of wanted to show you how to navigate around the system if you're not very familiar with it. It can be really quite daunting sometimes because it's not incredibly intuitive until you've used it for a while. So sometimes Google Analytics speeds it up or slows down, so bear with me a little bit if sometimes the system gets a little bit behind. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually build a report, and let's call this webinar report for conversions by landing page. And what I'm going to say is, how many optimizer or how many paid search expert leads do I get based on the landing page they start on, and how many advertiser leads do I get based on the landing page they start on? For us, goal 1 is a paid search expert signing up, and goal 6 is actually an advertiser signing up. It could be goal 2, goal 4, goal 5. It sort of depends on how you set these up over time. But just keep in mind goal 1 is a paid search expert and goal 6 is an advertiser. What I also want to know is the conversion rate. So that means if 100 people came into a landing page, how many of them actually turned into a lead? The number is almost as important as the actual conversion rate. So now we've told Google Analytics in our custom report, what I want to do here is show these metrics. You have to tell it sort of what subcategory, what segmentation you want. What you do here is basically pick a landing page as the dimension. So now you've got these different pieces of information or numbers, and you've got sort of them subsegments by the landing page. You go ahead and you create the report, and what it's going to show you is all of the landing pages that actually generated one or more leads, either for a paid search expert or for an advertiser, and how effective they are. Let me point you at a couple interesting things that you can see here. What I did was I sorted by the conversion rate for advertiser leads. So this is, out of 100 people that came onto a landing page specifically, how many of them actually filled out the form? As you probably heard before, just like in traditional direct marketing, 1 to 2% of people is a pretty standard rule of thumb that should convert. So let's take a look at the simplest thing. When people come into our homepage, how many of them actually turn into advertiser leads? Well, the answer here is 1.47%. Not bad, right in the middle of that 1 to 2% range. But I suspect because we have a pretty targeted website and people are looking for things about advertising, we could do a much better job of speaking to certain types of people and get better conversion rates. Let's go up the list here a little bit, and what you'll see is a conversion rate here for 2.6%. Wow. That means that people that came to this specific landing page actually converted at 2.6%, almost 50% more than that came to the home page. Well, if I had my druthers, I would have everybody go to that page because then I would get 50% more conversions. Let's take a quick look at that page. This is a page on the Trada website specifically designed for people that are interested in the cost per action, or basically, can I pay based on a variable percentage of my sale approach to advertising. And it's designed very specifically to have words related to cost per action, CPA, etc., that jump right out to the user. We have the same calls to action up here in the top right-hand corner, but the minute that someone gets to this landing page, they instantly feel comfortable that the page is designed specifically for what they're looking for. And so it's no surprise that the conversion rate is much higher on that page, about 2.6% versus 1.5% about where people just come to our homepage and start exploring. So that's a very simple example of how you can figure out which of your landing pages is actually working the best. And then, of course, the question is begged, well, that's great, but you're looking at a landing page that you've already created. How did you know to make that landing page? Well, this is also a very simple thing that you can figure out by using both Google Analytics and Google AdWords. I'm going to show you two different looks at the same kind of information so that you understand that you've actually got to sort of cross-reference these two to make the right decision. So, all right, the goal here is to say we're going to make 3 or 4 specific landing pages that we want our ads in AdWords to link to, but what should they be about? What are the most common topics that our users are concerned with? Where you can start is that you can actually go to something here in traffic sources called keywords. And a keyword here is going to be what someone typed into a search engine and then clicked on an organic link. So just to sort of differentiate, for example, if I typed in Trada into Google, there's no ads that are running next to it on the search. So this is an organic link here. Well, people are, of course, coming to our website because of typing in our brand name. They might have read about us on TechCrunch or VentureBeat or in all the different places that we've had stuff written about us. If you scroll down, there's some more information here. My name, Robertson comes up here or there. People might have seen me on some of the video interviews I had, and they're searching to try to find that video, and our web page comes up. These are all of the organic keywords, but it's very much tightly packed around sort of Trada-centric or team-centric kinds of concepts. So if you're trying to figure out a specific landing page to build, this really isn't that helpful. It's not really telling you much about the kinds of people that are coming to see you. What I'll do now is I'll actually flip over to AdWords to show you a different view of the same kind of information, a view of what people typed and then clicked on your ad in AdWords. And you can see the huge disparity between these two things, and I'll show you how you can come up with some good ideas for basic landing pages. I'm now jumping over to our AdWords account. So what I'm doing is I'm jumping into one of our campaigns, and I'm jumping into the Keywords tab, which shows me all the keywords that are running across all the ad groups in this account. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run something called a Search Terms Report. Some of you might be very familiar with this, but some of you might not be. A search terms report tells you what exactly the user typed into Google that ended up getting matched to one of your keywords that put the ad on the results page that they saw that they then clicked on. It basically says, what were people looking for when they ended up on my site? Well, what's interesting about this information, if you'll notice, I'm running it for the same time frame. So we're looking at all of May here. What's interesting is that this information is totally different than what we saw in Google Analytics. So people are looking for Yahoo AdWords, Bing advertising, best PPC, down here cost per action, Yahoo ads, lots of very specific things related to different types of advertising, different approaches to advertising, those kinds of things. And what we did is we looked through all of this data, looked at the most common things that people were looking for, and then built specific landing pages dedicated to them. So I already showed you the CPA or cost per action page, but we also built a page very specific to Yahoo and to Bing. So if you typed in Yahoo advertising or Bing advertising and you saw our ad and you clicked on it, you would land right on this landing page, and immediately you would see that this page was talking about what you cared about, and you would engage with it, and then engagement turns into more conversions and leads. What I'll show you if an example of this. So we have an ad that's built specifically around this concept of the CPA. This again is going back into AdWords, and this is showing one of our ads. And if I click on this, you'll see it'll take you directly to that CPA landing page. So that's the experience that the user has. What I want to emphasize here is that I just jumped back into Google Analytics, is that it is very misleading sometimes to only look at Google Analytics. It's a good starting point, but sometimes you have to look elsewhere and cross-reference the data, especially if you're dealing with the differences between SEM and SEO. Google Analytics is great for pure SEO data. AdWords, of course, is better for pure SEM data. So I think I've talked quite a lot about landing pages, so I'll leave that subject for a second and move on to something nearer and dearer to my heart, which is how to spend your money as wisely as possible in AdWords. Our experience talking to customers every single day that have used AdWords is that they either have two basic experiences. They've spent a lot of money and not gotten the results that they wanted, and they spent a lot of time and have not gotten the results that they wanted. Either too few clicks or too few sales, those kinds of things. Well, there's a lot of very subtle settings inside of AdWords that if you don't understand what the defaults are, you can actually spend a huge amount of your money incorrectly. I'm going to talk very specifically about one of them that's called day parting. Day parting is the way to tell AdWords what times of the day that you want to run your ads. To sort of embellish my point a little bit, I'm going to change the time frame of the data that I'm showing you just because it's the most obvious in our system to show you what I'm talking about. So as a starting point, what I'm going to do is show you something that you may not know about. I went to visitors, visitor trending, and visits. And as you would expect, this shows you the number of visits to the Trada website over this June time period. But what I've done is I've sorted by this, variable here, which is by hour. So a traditional graph, you would be used to seeing something like this. 500, 600 visits a day, great, it's growing over time, that's what we want to see. But if you click on this button, it compiles all of that data for the time frame and says, what hours of the day do people come to your website? So all of our settings are Mountain Standard Time, but you can see that there's a pretty, what you would expect to be normal distribution of information. Not a lot of people are interested at midnight. As the business day gets going, things pick up, a little bit of a spike right after lunch as people get back in, tapers off, people get home, they do some research, then they start watching Gossip Girl or whatever it is they do, and things taper off. Not surprising at all. I want to show you a feature of Google Analytics called segmenting that will actually allow you to extract a subset of this information in a very powerful and arguably revealing way. Segments are another one of these funky functions inside of analytics that very few people explore, but they're actually really easy to use and experiment with because they're very quick to set up. All a segment does is essentially allow you to take data that we're looking at right now and take a piece of it out and plot it as a comparison. As a starting point, let me show you a simple example. Let's create a segment here. I'm going to call this segment blog traffic. What my goal is to pull out of that information I just showed you all the traffic related to people that are coming to the blog. So what I would do in that case is I would take a look at the landing page, what we were talking about before, and I would say, only show me the landing pages that contain /blog. As a side note, we've laid out our site very carefully so that things are organized into folders and they're sort of named very specific ways. It makes actually building segments and filters and things like this in analytics incredibly easy to do. So a lot of people don't think about this when they're building their website. When it comes to now searching through data, the fact that I can type /blog and all of my blog information is underneath that is incredibly powerful. So I created this segment called blog. What I can do now is I can compare, for example, all the visitors with the blog traffic. I can add this segment, and what Google Analytics will show me is 2 lines on the graph. All of my traffic is in blue, and the blog traffic is in orange. What's interesting about it is it generally tracks, although we get an interesting spike of traffic towards the end of the day. People are getting tired, maybe they're doing some research before they go home. It's kind of hard to tell, but for the most part, it tracks very closely. Let me show you something that is really interesting. I created a segment. I won't go through the process again. Oops, actually, I will go through the process again. Let me create a segment really quickly that looks for just traffic to our landing pages that we've created for paid search. So I'm going to call these landing pages. We're going to do the exact same thing again, where we go in and we create landing page, contains, and the way that things work in Trada is that every landing page we name Trada dash something. So these are all the custom-built landing pages for our AdWords campaign. Let me go ahead and create this segment. What I'm going to do now is go back into the advanced segments, and I'm going to turn off the blog traffic and turn on landing pages and look at the data. Well, wow, this is interesting. We have a whole bunch of traffic coming to our landing pages at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and then it tapers off and almost nothing happens at the end of the day. Well, using some basic logic, one would say, that's not very smart. We're a business-to-business company. You would expect most people to be looking for your products, Monday through Friday, 7 in the morning to 10 p.m. at night. So the fact that we're getting a lot of traffic at 1 or 2 in the morning tells me that something is wrong. And this is actually a process that I went through in the end of June to figure out how to more effectively spend our money. Well, when you go into AdWords, I'm going to jump back into AdWords now. Each campaign has a tab called Settings. Now, there's so many settings in here that many of you probably haven't looked very closely at it. There's 2 things that are important about why traffic might be occurring at 3 in the morning. One is that when we set these campaigns up, we said, hey, well, why don't we do this in all the English-speaking countries we can think of? We're totally willing to take customers in Australia, UK, South Africa, et cetera, Canada, because we can service them well, and we're an English-speaking country, they're a company, they're English-speaking countries. That's great. The problem is that we've now stratified all of the time zones that people are going to be looking logically during their business hours. That's one problem. So we can actually change that and edit it down to just the US and Canada if we wanted to do that. More importantly, though, is there's something here at the bottom called ad scheduling. The default for ad scheduling when you create your AdWords account is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Think of this like you're running your own business. Should your business be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? When do you get most of your business? If you have a storefront, clearly you probably have 9 to 5 hours. You might be open just on Saturday, maybe not Sunday. Why would you want to run your ads any differently in AdWords? It's very easy to make a quick change in AdWords to adjust the times that your ads ran. As a side note, when I came and looked at this originally, I realized that we had never changed this default. We had actually been running our ads 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have a very popular and expensive category. Paid search itself is a very expensive thing to advertise on Google. There's a lot of people that are doing paid search, so we were blowing through our budget very early on in the day, which if you go back to this graph, you'll see here we have a whole lot of traffic and then it slows off during the day. Well, what's the simplest way to deal with that? Going back into Google AdWords, You basically can click on here. You can specify the times of the day that you want to be running. Let's say 8 to 9 is probably the most effective use of our money. The little trick here is if you hit copy to all days, it'll take all of this and make everything you're running 8 to 9. If I didn't want to run things on the weekend, I could turn those off specifically. It so happens from experience that people actually do a lot of research on our product on the weekend. They're reading blogs and things are linking to us. I go ahead and I hit save, and AdWords gave me an error. How about that? So perfect. That's my one demo snafu. So the moral of the story is you can, using Google Analytics data that I showed before, very easily figure out how to narrow down the focus time of your campaign and only spend money during the day. Most people's goal is to spend money the wisest, and if they've got a relatively small budget, to spend it at the right points in time. If you're only spending $50 a day or $100 a day, which a lot of you probably are, some might be spending $1,000 or even $10,000 a day. You know, the more money you're spending, the broader you want to make that spectrum. But at $50 or $100 a day, to spend every penny the best you can is a very good way to run the business. I'm going to talk about one last thing. Actually, I'm going to talk about two small things, but they'll take about 2 minutes each, and then we're actually going to take some questions. I know I'm covering a lot of ground here, but I very much wanted to give you guys a survey of all of the amazing things that you can do if you really dig in and learn Google Analytics, experiment a bit. You're not going to break it. It's got an incredible amount of information. The first thing that I want to do is show you something that I created. I'm going to use a custom report that I created here. I'm going to go back and show you all the traffic. And I'm going to try to answer the question of, okay, booting me out 1 second, there's something going on. Sorry, I'm just trying to get back into analytics here. Wow, Google is having a bad day. How about that? So hang on 1 second. Let me try to log back in. I'm not sure exactly what's happening here.
Sorry about that, guys. We really wanted to show this to you live in the system, which is probably really useful, but
here we go.
we're having a technical difficulty.
We're back in. So, okay, great. So what I was just about to show you, apologize for that, is that you can actually compare. I wanted to show you the difference between looking at the traffic that comes in from different ad networks that's organic, so from Google, from Ask.com, etc., to actually what traffic converts. And I built a custom report here that shows how many optimizer leads or how many paid search expert leads we got from different sources. And I'm actually going to filter here by the median and then build a little filter real quick, and that's going to allow me to look at only the actual search networks. And again, we'll explain in some of the follow-up about how you can do this. But whoops, let me change my time frame real quick. So what I want to show here is basically to answer the question of should I be advertising on Bing or on Yahoo? Well, let's take a look at it from the dimension of visits, right? So Google, over this time frame, we got 3,500 organic visits. On Bing, we got 101, so that's a 35x difference. On Yahoo, 44. So not a whole lot of organic traffic coming from the search engines. As a side note, because those numbers are so disparate, definitely a place we should put some emphasis to try to raise our SEO on Bing and on Yahoo. But if I take a look at from the side of how many people actually turned into leads for the business, the numbers are not as disparate. So off of Google Organic, we got 50 leads for one of our categories for paid search experts, but off of Bing, we got 4. Well, this was a 35 difference between visits and Bing, but this is definitely not a 35x difference between Google and Bing in terms of the number of leads we got. So that might lead you to the conclusion that it's actually worth your time to start spending some of your paid search dollars on Bing. One of the hardest things about doing that is that you've got to go and build a whole new campaign in AdCenter or a whole new campaign in Yahoo. As a side note, Trada runs across all the 3 networks. It makes it really easy to do this, so we have a lot of experience doing it. But before you go off and you do all that blindly, just hoping that the customers on Yahoo or Bing are the ones that you should be targeting, you can get some really good comparative data directly here out of Google Analytics before spending $1. The last thing I'll do very quickly is show you one more report that we built. And what I'm going to show you is a report that answers the age-old question of where is my traffic really coming from? Well, I built a custom report which we'll send you in the follow-up, and what I'm going to do is actually sort it by source. What this report does is it uses the actual path where a visitor came from, and then it sort of tricks Google Analytics into telling you the domain name as well, and it tells you the number of unique visitors. And what it will give you in the end is exactly the URL that people came from. It's actually a relatively hard thing to ask Google Analytics to do. You have to build a custom report to do it. If you want to find all the URLs around the web that link to you for whatever reason, all the data is sitting inside of Google Analytics. It's just really hard to get to. So if we go to mixerg.com/NeilRobertson-interview, there is an interview of me there and a link to the Trada website. And we got 190 visits from that. Well, other than just sort of being fascinating to look through as to who's linking to you and maybe finding blogs that people have written about you that you didn't know, maybe they've written a review that you want to respond to. This is a fantastic report for your social media director. They're trying to figure out who's talking about you and they can't find everything on Twitter. This is a great way to go and find all those links. The other thing that's really valuable about this is that if you're running display advertising, if you're using Google AdSense or you're running display ads, and you're not sure where to put your ads, well, people that are linking to you are obviously people that are related and relevant to your ads, and you can go ahead and dump those domain names right into your AdSense account, into your placements, and they'll actually, Google will run your ads on them if relevant. So that's my last little trick. Again, analytics has an incredible amount of information, but even sometimes asking a basic question like what URLs pointed to me takes building a custom report. Once you're confident in doing that and exploring the system, it's very easy to extract phenomenally valuable data, not just for basic marketing like landing pages or conversion rates, but more advanced marketing like social media or display campaigns. We use it very consistently to sort of iterate and get better and better every single day about what we're doing. And I hope as a starting point this encourages you to try the things I'm talking about, but also to go and explore and find your own data. So I know that our target here was to be about 30 minutes. I think we're just at the 30-minute mark. We're always trying to be respectful of everybody's time. I'm going to hand things back over to Anna and allow her to give a quick overview of Trada. As I've mentioned it a bunch of times, a few of you might be wondering what it is that we do. And then I'm going to stay here on the call for as long as you have questions and answer whatever questions I can. I hope that was useful for you. I know it was a bit of a fire hose of information, and the follow-up that we send you will explain step by step all the things that I did here today.
Thank you, Neil. So again, you heard Neil talk about Trada a few times, and obviously we gave you a peek into our system. But we're just going to take a couple minutes to talk to you about what Trada does, and then after this we'll be happy to take your questions. So, Trada is the world's first crowdsourced PPC marketplace. There are no fees for an advertiser to use Trada, and the way it works is we put dozens of certified experts to work on your campaign at the same time. So what you do is you specify your budget and the ad networks you want to run on and the price you're willing to pay per click or conversion. And then what Trada does is it takes these PPC experts from all around the world and puts them to work together on your campaign. And because of this, they can create thousands of keywords and hundreds of ads, and they only earn money when they meet your campaign goals. So it's a pretty sweet deal. We have an average of 25 certified paid search experts working together, 2,600 keywords and 110 ads. It's and if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. So it looks like we have a question right here. If you just 1 second. So here's a question. Is there a similar way to use Google Analytics to get better at AdSense? Neil, can you take that?
Absolutely. So I mentioned sort of right at the end that when I was showing the referral URLs that there was a way to use that data in your AdSense campaigns. One of the challenges of building an AdSense campaign is that the default settings are almost always to just let Google pick the websites that they want to run your text ads on. So what blog should it go on? Should it go on different journals? Those kinds of things. Well, that may work relatively well for you, but what a lot of people experience is they actually need to do a lot of hand manicuring of the sites that are most relevant to the topic of their website. So then the question becomes, what are those sites? There's millions and millions of sites out there. Where are my customers coming from? What blogs are they reading? Well, a lot of that information is sitting right in your Google Analytics. It's in that referral path report that I showed at the end where you can see the exact URL that it's coming from. So all you've got to do is take a look at all of the domain names, Trada.com, mygadgets.com, plumbingservices.com, whatever it is that you see in there, and take that and drop it into your AdSense campaign. It's called a managed placement. Tell Google you want to bid a certain price on it. And if they actually have the Google AdSense program running on that blog, Google will then put your ads on that blog. If they don't have Google AdSense running on that blog, Google just ignores it. It says, nope, this isn't the domain we support. It's actually incredibly sophisticated and sort of tricky, and I mean that in a sort of evil way because most people don't realize how to do that, way to actually already figure out which URLs out there are going to pay dividends for you in terms of being relevant to your customer base if you put your ads on them.
Thank you, Neil. So here's another question. Is this webinar recorded? Yes, we've been recording this, and we'll be posting it on our website, and we will send each of you a link. Here's a question. I frequently see that elapsed time is either 0 or very high, e.g. 15 minutes. What explains 0 time and very high times? It's extremely unlikely that someone would spend more than a few minutes on our site.
Sure, that's a great question. One of the things that you have to take into account with Google Analytics is that it uses a piece of technology that is sort of dependent on using cookies in the browser. So let me explain the 15-minute time because it's a lot more easy to explain. So somebody maybe comes to your website, they look at your homepage, and what happens is the Google Analytics tag that you put on your website, this is the sort of way that you install it. You put a little image tag basically inside of your site that's transparent to everybody. They put a cookie on the browser of that user that says, hey, this user showed up, and let's call them user 1. And they do that so that as user 1 moves around the site, they can track that user and they can build out those paths and the visitors and all the information that they're seeing. But imagine a real-world situation. After this webinar, you say, wow, this Trada thing's really interesting. You go to Trada.com, and then your coworker or your boss or whomever comes over to you and starts saying, hey, where do you want to go for lunch? And you get into a 10-minute conversation with them about sandwiches or hot dogs or whatever you want to do, and then you decide where to go. They walk away from your desk, and you go back to the Trada website, and you click onto another page to learn more. So what Google Analytics is going to see is that maybe at 12 o'clock you came to the home page, and 12:08 you came to the page that tells you more about how advertisers can sign up for the service. And it doesn't know the difference between the fact that you're actually reading the home page, maybe you're watching a video, maybe you've opened a case study and you're reading for 5 minutes, or that someone came over to your desk to ask you if you wanted sandwiches or hot dogs. That's how you end up with really long times. And you're right, they're completely irrelevant. So it's sort of like that one judge in each ice skating competition that always gives a 9.8 to everybody. You just have to throw it out, right? It's just not relevant. So that's the answer to the 15-minute thing. The answer to the 0-minute thing, there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe somebody clicked on your website and something went wrong and half the page loaded and something was slow for a second, like we saw here today with Google Analytics. It's the internet, things happen. And they just said, forget it, I'll come back later. Google Analytics is going to record that as 0 time. That's how you get sort of the really weird 0 time signatures. So again, kind of ignore the edges and focus on the sort of average time, and I think you'll end up over a large amount of data seeing something quite realistic.
Thank you. So we have another question here. I want to be able to give my goals a name other than Goal 1 and Goal 2. Is there a way to do that?
Yes, there is a way to do that. You actually, when you're setting up your goals, give them a name. One of the things that's confusing, I'm going to go back to analytics really quickly here. One of the things that's confusing is when you're creating custom reports, it doesn't use the names you've assigned them in your creation. So you have to remember, and this is completely mind-numbing, you have to remember what was goal 1, what was goal 2. But these are all reports that I built, and if we go when we actually run one, let's go run the landing page conversions, you'll see that it refers to them as optimizer lead, advertiser lead, etc. That's because I've named them when I set them up. So you can't get around the problem of Google's interface when you're building a custom report telling you goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, but when you're actually using the information in the system, it will apply this name to them. To set up goals, I believe you have to go into analytics settings and then go and actually edit the information here for Trada.com. It's a little bit confusing as to where you go find it. You have to sort of go out of the system and then go and edit it. So I probably saved you 30 minutes of looking around if you didn't realize that. Anyways, to review analytics settings, go to the URL that you want, hit edit, and the goals are actually built into that part of the system. And you'll see here that we named them whatever we wanted. If we wanted to call it something else, we would call it something else. Hopefully that was handy.
So one more question. What is a good bounce rate?
I'm going to take the legal answer and say it depends. It really depends a lot on the kind of content that you have or the kind of site that you have. So if, for example, you're a blog, well, it's not unusual to have people come in, like we talked about before, and just take a look at that one blog entry and then leave. So in that case, your bounce rate is going to be very high. In other businesses, maybe they only have 1 or 2 pages and they've got an offer on that page. That's incredibly simple. Give me your email address and I'll give you your credit score. And the only thing they do is they do paid search advertising for people that are looking for free credit scores. You can see incredibly low bounce rates, 20%, 15%. We've seen 10, 12% bounce rates on average for sites that are incredibly targeted and are essentially paying for traffic, so they're not getting any casual browsers. Again, it's really hard to say 50, 60, 70%. I think what's more important is the distribution. If you've got some pages that are bouncing at 100 and some pages that are bouncing at 20, it's probably worth taking a look at the ones that are bouncing at 20 and seeing what's different about them. And this kind of goes back to the whole idea of building custom landing pages. One thing that we learned very early on in Trada is that people love to consume information very quickly and easily. And when we built our first web page, we didn't have any videos, anything like that. You have to kind of explore, read a lot of information, that sort of thing. Well, we changed our system to have videos built right into the landing pages. And we tracked the number of views on these videos, and as soon as we did this, the number of views spiked up and the number of conversions occurred. We're actually building our whole website now based on all the data we're getting out of AdWords and Google Analytics to design even more lucrative and attractive landing pages using tricks like this, things like putting additional buttons at the bottom that say, sign up now because people might not see what's at the top right, all the kind of iterations that people go through as they build up their websites.
Okay, here's another question. Does Trada work with agencies that use a different analytical tool? If I understand, the pay-for-compensation method for working with your PP experts would need a Google Pixel.
So let me separate 2 of the pieces of the puzzle. The way that Trada works is that people can either pay us on a per-click basis. So they can say, I'm going to pay 50 cents for every single click that I get. Your paid search experts are responsible for finding things that are less than that. If they find a click on Google for 45 cents, they make the 5 cents difference. That's the pay-for-performance system. We do the same thing on the conversion side. So you can say, I need to sell a product on my website for less than $10, or I need someone to sign up as an advertiser on Trada's website for less than $50, whatever the number is. And we keep track of all of the money that gets spent on Google, Yahoo, and Bing for that, before that sort of lead gets generated, and then whatever's left over, say they spend $45 and you're willing to pay $50, the $5 is what they get. They don't get paid for their time, they don't get paid for a percentage of their spend, etc. The way that we actually track that conversion, buying something or a lead, is we have our own cross-network conversion tracking system. It works exactly the same way as AdWords does, the same way as Google Analytics does. All of these technologies are exactly the same. you basically put that pixel or JavaScript, depending on what you want, onto your thank you for buying page, and Trada uses that as our definitive source of conversions. So part of the question is, where do you get your conversion data from? And the answer is, if you want to run a conversion-based program in Trada, you need to install on the client's website that conversion information. You also mentioned other analytics tools. We don't support Omniture, unfortunately, yet, though that's in our plans. But you also mentioned agencies. Actually, the fastest growing part of Trada's business is the agency side of our business, because agencies really struggle to be able to find the time to do Google, Yahoo, and Bing to build up tens of thousands of keywords, constantly optimize the campaigns. They view us as a way to build really scalable campaigns for their customers and sort of guide those campaigns to the right price in the marketplace. So that's a big part of what Trada does, and who Trada serves is actually a whole bunch of agencies, everything from two folks all the way up to top 10 agencies.
Thank you. Here's another question. If I only have an English version of my B2B website, is there any point in having Germany or Japan in my demographics? Does Google interpret my ad?
So if you've ever used an automatic translation engine on the internet, you probably should be happy to know that Google does not try to interpret your ad for you. But that said, you can actually build campaigns directly in AdWords that have language and country-specific targeting. So, for example, I'm going to jump back over to AdWords here. Let me see if it kicks me out. And I mentioned here before that we targeted locations. You could actually build an individual campaign to target Germany. Then the question would be, what are the right German keywords and what are the right German text ads? And that's a very, very hard problem to solve if you don't speak German or French or Spanish or what the case may be. One of the things about Trada that's interesting is we actually have optimizers all over the world. We have some in France, some in Germany, UK, Greece, even in China, etc. And from time to time, we will help people run international campaigns, because what they really need is they need sort of people that idiomatically know the language. It's just knowing the language is different than being able to write a compelling text ad in the language, or just being able to pick up a dictionary and type in the right keywords is different than trying to understand, oh, people are typing in the word free every time they look for my product, that's why nobody's buying. So the answer is you can do it yourself inside of Google if you choose to, although if you don't have those skills inherently in-house, you're probably not going to have much success.
Do you find that people who disable JavaScript have a significant impact on the accuracy of Google Analytics?
It's a really good question. Let me broaden it for people that might not understand the technical question. So there's two ways that most tracking tools work. One is through an image tag. They put a one-by-one transparent image that actually does appear on your website, but that image gets loaded off of the Google Analytics server, and that's how Google Analytics sees every single visitor to each page of your website. The other thing that people do that you can also do is you can put a JavaScript segment. JavaScript is just a little piece of code that you put up on your web page, and the browsers all know how to run it. The problem with JavaScript is that there's lots of different versions of JavaScript. There's lots of different browsers. Some people are still using Internet Explorer 6, even though they just launched Internet Explorer 9. The different browsers support different versions of JavaScript. So it gets very complicated. And what happens is that no individual methodology actually works for everybody. To answer the question directly, some people also actively turn off JavaScript in their browser because they know they're being tracked by it. Some people don't like the idea of having a cookie follow them around the internet because someone could do something theoretically evil. Although the way that cookies work, that's highly, highly hard to do and unlikely. But people still do it, and that's their right to do that. The question is, does it impact your analytics? Well, very early on at Trada, we ran a very comprehensive test to answer this question specifically. What works better, an image or JavaScript? What we actually did is we set up a series of tests on something called Mechanical Turk, which is a crowdsourcing company that Amazon runs, and they have hundreds of thousands of workers that will perform basic tasks for you all over the world. And what we wanted to do was to have them simply walk through 3 or 4 web pages and figure out, based on what browser they were using, how well JavaScript worked or not, to get a large enough sample. We actually had over 92 different browser types by the end of the time, and we had over 3,000 or 4,000 different users walk through the process. And what we found was that JavaScript-related issues, either by browser, and we were using exactly the same Google AdWords and Google Analytics JavaScript tags, that by browser type, the information was de minimis. It was 2, 3, 4% of the 3,000 actually had any significant problems getting through our system or us registering their data. So there's a little bit of effect there, but really, speaking as someone who ran a test on this very specifically, I wouldn't worry about it. There's other ways to, there's other issues with the data that come between Google Analytics and your other systems that are bigger issues.
Thank you. How would you use Google Analytics for data for retargeting?
So Google Analytics is kind of merged together with AdWords, and I didn't really explore much of the interface for that. Google Analytics, Google in general has a whole bunch of new functionality around retargeting, and there's everything from it happening between display ads and paid search, and also giving you data. For those that don't know what retargeting is, it's basically the concept that says if someone comes into Google and searches on something, let's say they search on BlackBerry cell phones, that's a very big declaration of intent. I'm looking for BlackBerry cell phones. Let's say I don't do anything on Google.com, and then an hour later I'm looking around on the New York Times website. I'm reading an article. Well, it would be in my best interest if I was running ads on New York Times to actually show an ad for a BlackBerry cell phone to the person that just told Google that it was interested in a BlackBerry that they were interested in a BlackBerry cell phone. The concept of retargeting, and it sort of works both ways. But the concept of retargeting is to take search information and apply it to display or banner ads and vice versa. The easiest way to get started with this is something called Google Search Funnels, which basically tell you in Google the types of searches people were doing where your ads were shown but not clicked on, and then the ones that were clicked on later on. And what it's trying to do is start to include all the impressions that you see that have no value to you, trying to sort of show you how they influence people on the Google.com side of things. And so those search funnels are part of what you can get in the Google Analytics and AdWords integration. Retargeting is a very fastly moving subject, and I expect that Google is going to announce lots of things in the retargeting space in the next 6 months because they're going so heavily into display with their acquisition of Invite Media and all the other things they're doing. So great question. Super early days of retargeting. I keep looking out for things from analytics directly or in the Analytics App Store that might actually get very sophisticated about this.
Thank you, Neil. So we don't have any more questions. That was Neil Robertson, CEO of Trada. Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you very much for coming. We will email you a brief on how to set up reports. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.